Let me tell you about this really cool character from this action movie I saw once. He does kung fu and he's the best at it, much like anything else he tries his hand at. He is highly respected and everyone seeks to him for advice and enlightenment. On top of it all, he has a heart of gold. His name, Master Oogway. It might sound like he's a tortoise, and that's because he is. He's the founder of the Valley of Peace and used to be the elder master at Jade Palace. And he's the founder of Kung Fu. But that's what Kung Fu Panda told me, so I'm not sure how true that is. Despite all of this, his most appealing and noticeable trait is his peace of mind and complete awareness of his surrounding, both of which I've come to realize are like magnets repelling each other, capable of attracting but only if they're adjusted. Zen or chilled out, whatever you want to call it. Master Oogway is the calmest tortoise I know. This one time on a rainy day, he had a vision that Tai Lung, the villain, was going to break out of prison. When he broke the news to Shifu, the master under him, he freaked out. But Master Oogway just went back to where he was meditating like there was nothing wrong. Shifu was hastily trying to find ways to solve the issue, but you can't solve a jailbreak in a few seconds, human or not. So now what? At this point, Oogway says something that didn't mean anything to my 6-year-old self, but a few months ago, it really impacted me. He says, "Your mind is like this water, my friend. When it is agitated, it becomes difficult to see. But if you allow it to settle, the answer becomes clearer." It wasn't that climactic, but it stayed with me. Fast forward to February and curveball, it's 2 weeks until my board exams. And in these 2 weeks, I realized that I was in 10th and my board exams were literally knocking at my doorstep. So as any professional procrastinator, I panicked and started studying. I think it would help if I gave you all the details. I didn't understand 2 of my chemistry chapters, the most important maths chapter, and 8 entire eco chapters. I know. I sat down to properly study for the first time in many weeks, and the amount of nervousness after seeing how much I didn't know was indescribable. Stress, tension, fear, all of the above started pouring in and I just couldn't concentrate. I tried to find a way out of it, but there was just too much noise in my head. One incident from this period of my life was when my chemistry teacher gave me 19 chapters to study in 10 days. And as expected, the plan failed in 2 days. Dealing with my own self-doubt was tedious enough, so I would lie to my teacher, telling her I was on track when I really wasn't, blocking the only thing that kept me pushing. I slept for barely 3 hours every day, assuming I thrived under pressure, but turns out I didn't. I realized that pressure and stress were 2 completely different things. Even though I wasn't pulling my hair out or throwing things around, I was still stressed. I would sit behind a desk for hours trying to focus on the output while not caring about it at all. There were so many instances where I had to scare myself into studying. It might or might not be helpful, but it's definitely not how things should be done. I started resenting what I used to enjoy, and it's not a fun place to be. I knew for a fact that there was no point beating myself over what I hadn't done. I had to be a part of the solution and not the problem. But I had to figure out how first. My point is, if I don't know what I'm working towards, how am I supposed to get there? The goal is to get to point B, but what does that even look like? This is when my mind did those fun little "I'm distracting you" things, and I ended up thinking about Oogway. Cartoons always amused me. They were like a different way of looking at things. This is when the water analogy came to surface from the very, very back of my head. It didn't make me a genius, but it gave me an explanation. It made me feel like even though I was a potential failure, I still deserved to breathe. I left the desk and just stared at the ceiling for 30 long minutes. My brain was too tired to think, so I just lay there, empty-headed and calm. After that, it wasn't any easier to study, but I actually enjoyed it, and that made all the difference. In hindsight, I realized that I just needed the water to settle. The whole experience is a blur now, thank God. But I can say that I'm not as disappointed in myself as I would have been. Bottom line, Kung Fu Panda saved my life. There must have been so many situations where we stress over a problem for hours, just assuming we're solving the problem, but end up wasting the very time we were trying to save, only to end the day by saying, how did I not notice that? It was right in front of me. I'm just 16 and problem solving is already such a tedious task for me, which is also nothing compared to what I see my parents deal with every day. So here's my diagnosis. Our brains are capable of such complex thought, and that's great until we lose control over it. Our brain goes into autopilot mode and there's nothing we can do to avoid it. The reason our brains need a break is because we try to power through it blindly while carrying a million thoughts on our head, and that's too much to ask. Let me frame it this way. What if we stop trying to think about the problem and start thinking about the solution instead? It's just a different perspective, a clearer point of view, and that's all we need sometimes. No situation has a clear-cut answer, but there is one theme in all of them. Only we can solve it. After all, it's our reflection we see in that water. And that's proof enough that there is an answer. I don't have the key to problem solving. Like I said, I'm only 16. So I guess we just have to wait for the water to settle to figure that one out too. Thank you.